Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more MBTI. Today we're continuing our journey of learning more about interesting people through MBTI, and we're going to be talking with Jimmy Corsetti from the Ian Crossland podcast. But before we do that, let's talk about the system because you have not seen MBTI done the way that I do it. This type grid is my own devising, and it uses 5 factors to determine what your type might be. We look for things that we can identify in others that we might identify with in ourselves so that we can type ourselves and learn how to change ourselves in the way that we want to change us. This is not an official typing of anybody, right? This is no medical diagnosis or nothing of that way. It is us looking for examples of how to improve ourselves. This type grid makes it a little bit easier because people are pretty simple and there are 5 choices that can help you determine which way you happen to think. The first of those is new things or ideas. Do you focus mainly on the things that you can put your hands on, the senses that you can actually give or are given, the things that are real going into the past? Or are you focused on the ideas, the things that you can't put your hands on that are concepts, things of that nature? Whichever one of those you focus on, you are either getting new ones or sifting through with all of those into the best one. So you are either looking for new or old. That's going to give us our columns. From there, we look and see whether you are doing it primarily for yourself or for the tribe, because you do one of those. Self does not mean that you're selfish. It means that you consume the information or the thing first, and then you give it away. As opposed to the tribe, your first instinct is to give it to everybody else, and then you take from that. The way that you do it is either rigid or flexible. You either do it your way or you're adjustable around other people's ways. And you are either direct or informative in how you deliver that information. You either give all the information in one go and stop, or you give all the information 2 or 3 times and chase down a rabbit hole. All of these things help us to figure out different parts about ourselves so that we can fix ourselves in the way that we want to fix ourselves. Figure out why we get stuck in the places we get stuck. And so we're going to look at Jimmy Corsetti from this podcast. We are about 15 minutes into the podcast. I'd like to let the guest get good and comfortable if I can, and this is not antagonistic in the slightest. Ian is very curious about the topic. We are talking about the reshot structure and Atlantis. If you are unaware, I have my own theories about what happened there, and I talk about them in other places, so I'm going to try to refrain from talking too much about that and focus mainly on what the topic of, what the focus of the discussion is about. Are we talking about ideas and concepts, or are we talking about things that we can actually put our hands on, evidence, that type of thing? So let's dig in and see what Jimmy has to say. Let's go.
It might not even been the
1 second, I have to plug in the old headphone trick. All right, now
the
go.
waves were so high, but what happened was I learned not only did the comets smatter the North America and melt all that ice, so you have all
We've already done typology on Ian if you're interested.
this waves of water flushing, but because all that ice melted, the ground that was underneath the glaciers went up because the weight of the ice was no longer there to press it down, so all that land went up, and then all this
I will say this about what I believe. That is 1/2 of the solution.
land on the other areas of Earth went down because that land raised so fast in North America. So
That's
not
the
only
static
did Atlantis
pressure.
get hit by a bunch of water, it also sunk down because of the repression.
Ian needs to get Randall on.
That's
On
the
other
theory,
areas.
and there's evidence of this. For example, when it comes to Antarctica, so with that immense amount of weight, so North America had between 1 and 2 miles thick of ice on it.
Okay, so right here, we're getting things, right? This was a thing. Like, we had 1 to 2 miles of ice. This was history.
And the amount of weight on that is almost, mathematically inconceivable. It's so much weight. So essentially, the Earth works as a sponge, the crust, I should say, and so it'll kind of flex back up once that weight is off. And these
Okay, so that could be looked at as an idea, but it's not. It's using the idea in support of the actual thing. The isostatic pressure is the actual thing.
seen evidence of this, say, in Antarctica. It's covered in 2 miles of ice almost in some areas there, and it's caused the land to depress as they've come to find out through studies and core samples and drilling. So
Studies, core samples, and drilling sounds like evidence to me.
well, yeah, it's pretty wild.
Like evidence equals things, right? Concepts, you can use evidence in support of concepts, but he's using the concepts in support of the evidence, right? He's bringing the actual things more than the actual ideas.
So it's a pretty compelling argument because, when it comes to that water that would have melted off the North American ice shelf, it would have changed the ocean currents, which then would change weather patterns. So when it comes to the Sahara Desert, I think it probably had to do with the change in the Gulf Streams.
Okay, so we're keeping a lot of ideas open here, right? If this water had done this thing, that is things. But with the things that it does is the ideas. So we're looking at a variety of ideas that could come from the thing. That's kind of using the ideas and the broad spectrum of them to narrow down into the one thing. Now, he is talking about a one thing. So if we get multiple instances of him narrowing things into the one thing, that will give us a good determination of what we're looking at.
The streams, the ocean currents, affect temperature on Earth more than anything besides the sun, and actually it is influenced by the sun as well. So, like for example, the UK, England, they don't get a ton of snow, but they're far up there. They're not quite in the Arctic, but they're up there, but they get far less snow than New York. So, that's it.
Okay, so that's things, and it's using the ideas in support of the thing.
It's all because of the Gulf Stream that goes up the Atlantic, and it
Again,
warms the
a thing.
environment. So the theory is that if the North American ice shelf got obliterated and melted rapidly, it would have poured it, that fresh water would have poured into the ocean and would have thus changed the currents. So it's pretty wild. Something crazy happened here on Earth 12,000 years ago.
I got a video, 12,000 year disaster cycle.
I'm gonna pull it up again just because looking.
Okay, so far, what have we got from Jimmy? We've gotten a whole lot of things and some ideas in support of things. The narrowing down, the new or the old, we're not really sure on that yet. It doesn't seem to have a whole lot of self-focus so far. There is some tribe focus, but we're talking about research. We're talking about things that are external. So by nature, it's going to be more tribe focused. But there's not a lot of I statements. There's not a lot of me statements. There's a lot of this is the evidence statements, which is relying on the tribe. That is not a direct tribe indicator because, but it is leaning in that direction. He seems to be a little bit informative, not overly so, but more than direct. And that's, I think, where we're at now.
If this thing is like, I can spend hours just looking at this and looking at all the little pieces and parts of
I can tell you what that is.
This is like the outer ring of water, I would imagine.
That's what that would have been. If it's the site, like I'm open-minded enough to know that it's possible that it's not, but the thing is,
I have an alternative theory.
is that there's so many similarities that are so
Okay, so now he's getting defensive over this, right? Let's hold on. Let's see.
possible that it's not, but the thing is that there's so many similarities that are so consequential. The most detailed and consequential aspects of this legend of Atlantis matches the wrist shot. And to me, I'll be honest, it is, in my opinion, by far the most likely site, and I do believe that it was. It's possible that it wasn't. I'm open-minded enough to know that I don't know. Like, what's that? Is it from Socrates?
Okay, so that's a flex indicator, right? I'm open enough to know that I may not know. It's not a my way or the highway type of situation. So that's giving a good bit of flex. Again, we seem to be keeping the ideas open in support of the thing.
The true wisdom is to know that you don't know. So it's like, hey, I wasn't alive at that time. What I do know is that it is premature and foolish for anyone to say, no, it wasn't. It's one thing to have doubts. It's
Right. I have what I feel to be a reasonable explanation.
one thing to scrutinize the topic and to figure
And I don't dismiss Jimmy out of hand for what he believes in it.
out the truth. But it is still a mystery. And I should also say this. The Eye of the Sahara is a geological mystery. The consensus is that it was most likely a collapsed volcanic dome, but you won't find any other examples anywhere else on Earth that look just like this. I've seen other examples of collapsed volcanic domes, and there is a circular depression nature to it, but nothing like this with the repeated concentric circles.
Okay, so again, we're bringing in examples, right? Now, he may be gathering examples here because we're getting a good bit of evidence from different sources not all necessarily related to the one topic. So that could be a gather things as opposed to an organized things. That's something that's still kind of up in the air. He seems to be more focused on the actual things, on the actual evidence, on the actual structure, on the actual events. So that is leaning me heavily towards things as opposed to he could be doing just spitballs, right? This is what I believe and not pull up any evidence. That isn't entirely acceptable when you're talking about Atlantis, but that's not where he's focused. He seems to be focused on the things. The hard part is narrowing down whether it's the new things or the old things. Are you trying to fit everything into the one thing? Are you saying that this is the best thing? Are you about the experience that you're receiving? As opposed to, hey, look at all these things. Take this experience that I'm giving you. And are you getting the job done, right?
Circles.
Yeah, I
It's
heard
so
that
specific.
that it was like an underground eruption that didn't erupt all the way. That's probably what you're saying is the dome volcano that didn't explode. It just hit the land and caused like a ripple.
Swelled.
And that could have happened 20 million years ago. And then humans came along and found it and were like, holy shit, let's set up a kingdom here because this is easy to defend.
That's what I'm saying, is that, because again, let me just be clear. A lot of people who speak out against this theory will say, it's a natural formation, it's not it. And I'm like, wait a second.
A lot of people will say it's a tribe thing, right? That is a tribe flex, right? You're working yourself around what people are thinking, as opposed to trying to just bulldoze your way through their thoughts.
If you look at the Greek translations for the word island, and as well as for being created by Poseidon, who is said to be the father of the earth, I'm like, it seems to me that it would be natural. But not only that, some people will say
That seems to be a consider these things as opposed to, like, he's all about the reshot structure and Atlantis. That is a one thing for him. But he's bringing in a lot of other things in support of that thing. So this whole thing could be a, hey, y'all look at this thing too, as opposed to a, this is the best thing, right? And so there does seem to be a lot of different things being focused on. That lends me towards the keep your options open, SE type of experience.
well, it was an island in the ocean. So now I'm going to say, well, wait a second. Are you saying that islands aren't natural all of a sudden? Of course it would be something natural, and we build on geological natural formations throughout the world all the time. In fact, I should re-share my screen here just to paint a picture for people. Give me half a second. I'll bring this right up.
Absolutely.
Because people need to understand that, this is something that we've been doing, and we haven't stopped doing, and we'll continue to do through all of human history. So watch this. Let me just bring up a second here. You gotta keep in mind, I got like thousands and thousands of slides. Okay, so here we go. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, what is that?
This is, I think it's in South America. I can't remember. This is Indonesia, maybe. Forgive me, I don't know where it's at, but the point is,
That is a no organization indicator, right? He's got all of these pictures in this one thing, right? And so that's a no organization. But bringing the experience without having the, this is, right? This is slide 46 JPG. This is not location JPG. That lends towards these things as opposed to this thing. Because if he was a this things person, it is more likely that this would be labeled in the correct manner. So that lends me more towards the, hey, y'all look at all these pretty things, as opposed to, hey, y'all look at this shiny rock.
this is just look at it. Look at this. This is a geological formation that few would have thought.
Just look at it. I don't know where it is.
But that's what we
That is SE dominant.
as humans do. We build on top of cliffs. We build on top of shallow seas. Like this is I believe in Florida right here. Or
Yeah.
But the point is that we build in places that would seem to be unlikely, just like the Native Americans of North America. We're building in caves. We're building in all kinds of exotic places. We do it in Italy. Look at that, like on the side of cliffs. So the what I'm trying to illustrate here is that
Look at all these pretty things.
building on natural formations is what we do, have done throughout history, and do today, and will continue to do so in the future. And again, this goes back real quick to Poseidon. The definition, this is right out of Encyclopedia Britannica. Poseidon was the god of the sea and of water generally, earthquakes and horses. And what's interesting is that clearly the wrist shot was blasted by the ocean, so I find it interesting that they would credit to being have created by the god of the sea and water. But not only that, just to cite my sources here, the name Poseidon in ancient Greek means either husband of the earth or lord of the earth. And I know I already said it, but just to reiterate, that's Mother Nature. It's literally saying that, like, yeah, it was created naturally. That's my opinion.
Wasn't
that's the argument.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. We're going to do the type, right? Let's go ahead and pop it on over and look at it. He seems to be things. That's going to put us on the left-hand side. He seems to be new, right? There seems to be a focus on let's bring in all of this evidence as opposed to, hey, y'all look at this thing, right? This seems to be more of a keep the experience open instead of y'all narrowing it down to this one thing. So I'm going to go ahead and say new, right? There was significant evidence that, like, Jimmy's all about the wrist yet, but that doesn't mean that he is an organized things. That would make you think that going into it, though, because it's the one thing. But he keeps bringing so many different pieces of evidence, right? He's bringing the floods, he's bringing the different maps, he's bringing a whole lot of different specific things, but differing things, not all necessarily tied into just this one thing. So it's giving me more of a new things as opposed to sort things. So that's going to put us all the way on the left-hand side. He seems to be fairly tribe-centered on it, right? He is bringing in evidence from other people and not keeping the focus on himself. We haven't seen an overabundance of I's. We haven't seen a whole lot of me's. So that's given me more of a tribe than a self-feel on this. This is all about his interpretation of history, right? This whole interview is about his interpretation. But he is bringing small pieces of evidence in support of the one idea. He seems to be fairly flexible about it too, right? So that is going to take us, we're in the bottom two columns, and we're going to be on the very bottom left-hand corner now. We're going to be in the ESFP, because he seems to be fairly rigid, or he seems to be fairly flexible. He is considering other people's options. He's even explaining other people's options. So give me 1 second, and we will pull up the ESFP as soon as I can find it in my non-organization here. And so now we have the ESFP. Is he direct or informative? He's not direct, because a direct person gives you the information. They give you all of the information. They may throw in an example, but there will not be two, right? They are trying to give you as much information as possible, the whole story, as fast as they can, without any extra explanation. Now, a lot of this could be just Jimmy talking because he likes to talk. That's probably what it is, right? He's giving the examples, but he's giving 2 or even 3. He's giving all the information 2 or even 3 times. It's not a bad thing. People like me are direct. We don't explain enough. Like, my whole channel is me working on direct. But sometimes you can go off too far. He's doing very well in keeping it in check, but I am leaning towards informative. That's going to change our third function going down this stack, right? If you are extroverted, then you are informative because you are trying to give everyone the information. If you are introverted in this third spot, you are trying to keep the information for yourself. He is giving it away. And so that's going to be an ESFP on the left-hand side. That is just a normal ESFP. So what are we looking at here? He is going to be getting, without even really thinking about it, all the examples, right? He is going to be able to do that very well. He's going to be inclined to finish things that he starts. He is going to work through to the end. He is going to have the supporting evidence. But what he is most concerned with, right, what he feels responsible for, because that's what your crown is where you feel responsible, is past feelings and morals. So what I feel about this situation is what's going to guide him going forward. He's going to work around other people because he's a feeler, but he's going to do that in the way that makes him feel good. He's going to get defensive over other people's rationale, the things that other people think. He's going to think that he understands what they think, but he's going to get it wrong. He's going to miscommunicate, or he's going to misunderstand it and get defensive over that misunderstanding. Now, the reason why is the NI. Right? The throat is what you miscommunicate and misunderstand, and then the third eye is seeing forward and getting defensive. So he is misunderstanding the best option, and because of that, he's getting a lot of feedback from the TE, and he gets defensive over that. That's not always a bad thing. It's not always a good thing. It's just something to bear in mind. And you understand that you do have to narrow down the one idea, but you probably narrow down the one idea into the wrong thing. It's a little bit farther down in the stack. The two in the middle, the throat and the heart, don't receive a whole lot of information by themselves. You have to force feed it. You have to make sure you're doing it correctly, because those spots are low info receptors. But your heart is what you really want to do. It is the thing that drives you, and that is to have the best thing, right? So if Jimmy can narrow down into the correct idea, the best thing, and give it to the tribe, he is going to be so happy with that. The way that he is going to feed that need is through other people's feelings. He's going to have to kick it back to the tribe and get some input on the ethics and the past or the future feelings. How is everyone going to feel about this going forward? The solar plexus is what feeds into your heart. So your heart is what you want to do. Your solar plexus gives it the nourishment in order to do that. So if you can get the ethics in line and get the tribe feedback correct, it is going to give you the best thing, which is what you really want. You're really good at seeing all the things and getting all the evidence, but to get narrowed down correctly, you need to get the tribe feedback. The sacral is where you intentionally choose the wrong thing. Now, nobody ever says, you know what, this is a terrible idea, I'm going to do it. You just do it unintentionally, right? You know that was a bad idea. The part that's going to trip you up in it, that you're going to intentionally choose the wrong thing, is your own logic here. It is going to be your personal thoughts and not considering the yes-no checks in the correct manner. You do that because of you're seeing too many ideas, right? Your base is where you really get stuck. You get a lot of information, but most of it is the wrong information. Most of it is negative information. Most of it is hold you down information. The top you get good information at 90%. The bottom you get bad information at about 90%. And so your bad information is going to be all the ideas. You got too many ideas floating around out there. You're not very good at narrowing them down because you're not considering all of the things along the way up. You're not taking logic into consideration. You're running off of what everybody's thinking and not considering at all really the feelings behind why they're not getting that correct. In order to work back up, like you would start in your NE, and if you would want to know how you can integrate this particular stack, if you identify with the traits that we have shown in Jimmy, and think that maybe you too are an ESFP, I will have a video linked up here where I do a 45-minute spiel just on these two types right here and how to integrate that into yourself so that you can become stronger, how that you can actually identify these ideas and how to logic check your way through them and how to make sure that the tribe's ethics are aligned with them. All of these things are part of the Infinite Integrations playlist and on the ESFP video. So now we're going to go back and we're going to watch a few more minutes and we're going to look for some confirmations, right? We are looking for the ESFP and we want some confirmations on whether he is actually bringing all of this evidence, right? Whether he is actually using his morals and his feelings about the situation to be responsible for making sure that everybody sees these things. Whether he is getting defensive over what everybody thinks, whether he is choosing the best possibility going forward, right? That's the top part of the stack. That's what he's going to be aligned towards naturally. Now, getting the wrong information, using logic incorrectly, and missing the ethics and the organization, that's all the negative side. That's the parts that you want to work on. So now let's dig in and get some confirmations. I said go.
Was that Atlas's father in mythology, Poseidon? Is he the father of Atlas?
Yeah, so Poseidon had 5 sets of twins, so 10 boys. They were all boys. And the very first born was named Atlas.
I've got that in my Plato's playlist.
So Atlas went on to
We did the works of Plato.
become the king of
Not all of them.
Atlantis.
And
But
they
this
had a
part-
tendency to be like, my father created everything. Shut up. Don't question it. So
Right.
I could see them being like, yeah, Poseidon made it all. Now don't question it and die, mortals, or whatever the hell they're
Right.
manipulating.
And let me actually, while I'm on a roll here, let me just say something else, because a lot of the people that speak against the Rishot will say, well, it's not west of the Pillars of Hercules. Well, if you actually look at the citation, and this is right out of the Critias, and this is right on MIT's website, because it's open, it's open source. The Critias, it's thousands of years old. Anyone can read it or
I've got it read. Like, he's bringing us some more evidence here, right? And this is what the people think.
source it online for free. Excuse me. But it was an island situated in front of the straits. In front.
Right, so he is specifically bringing up this example because he is pushing back against what everyone thinks, right? That is the tribe, the TE defensiveness. That's it.
Of, not west, in front of. And when you consider that if you left the Straits of Gibraltar, which is what it's referring to, you have a couple choices. You either go right along the coast of Spain, left along the coast of North Africa, or straight out into the endless ocean horizon at your own peril. And one of the reasons why I think it's compelling to argue the Rishot is that, considering that Atlantis was said to be busy all day and all night, that's a major metropolitan. Why would people go out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean to conduct trading and buy, fruits and vegetables? And again,
I have an explanation for that, but again, we're having the tribe pushback, right? That's what's happening right here.
that's a major metropolitan. Why would,
Like,
would people go out into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean to conduct trading and buy, fruits and vegetables? And again, at your own peril, a couple thousand miles out. So something that people need to understand is that the Rishot structure is in front of the Straits of Gibraltar. Again, and people would have followed the coastlines. It's not to say that people wouldn't have ventured straight out, but arguably, people follow coastlines
there we go with some more defensive thoughts.
as a way of navigation. And if you do that for over 1,200 miles as the bird flies along the coast of North Africa, it takes you right in front of the Rishot structure.
Okay, so we're getting actual physical examples, right? What he is doing is bringing it into the physical, into the things, into the touch. And so we are seeing the SE being brought in.
Which, by the way, we're talking about a distance from modern-day New York City to Lincoln, Nebraska. So it's a vast distance. Furthermore, one more argument is that the ocean currents, which we were speaking of earlier, they go south right in front of the Straits of Gibraltar in Africa. So if you were to leave the Straits of Gibraltar, the current would naturally want to take you south, right in front of the Rishot.
With the currents, you're correct.
So yeah, I feel like
I think he might be missing some ideas, and I think that might be why he is so honed in on the reshot now.
it's a very
The reshot makes sense if you don't consider the other possibility of it.
there's some very compelling arguments to be made, and again, it's clear that something happened here. The ocean was there at one
Absolutely.
point in time. It might not be there today, but you can see the satellite image.
And see, again, he's bringing in another example, right? He feels this way, and so he's bringing the example to make sure he feels responsible for his feelings in this situation. And that's one of the ones that's hard to give an example of, right? But he's bringing all of this because he feels that way in order to push back against the tribe's thoughts. So if you look at it in that manner, it does fit. Now, that could be me just trying to make it fit, but I don't really think so. I think it really does fit fairly well.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that. Those striations. Like, this is water. This is textbook water erosion, fluvial erosion, and it's inexplicable. We don't know how this happened or when, but
Plasma.
clearly it was far more recently than the 56 to 66 million years ago of the Trans-Saharan Seaway. So, yeah, man, there's a real mystery here in the Sahara. And let me just say one last thing. Even if the Rishot is not in Atlantis, people need to focus on what the heck happened to the Sahara Desert.
That's true.
In itself is
People need to focus on is another one of the TE pushbacks, right?
incredibly important
To this idea, even.
and drives me towards this topic, because it's like there's a real scientific discovery here waiting to be happen, because nobody knows exactly what happened to the Sahara to have obliterated it by the ocean. But now we live in a time where people can get on the internet and look on Google Earth and find all kinds of interesting things. And like I said, it's here for all who have eyes to see.
Yeah.
Again, that seems to be a fairly good confirmation to me, right? He is giving a lot of tribe pushback if you're looking for that. Now, in the very beginning, that's not what we were looking for. We were looking for if it's tribe at all. We were looking for whether it was flexible or rigid. Now, he is flexible in how he is pushing back against the tribe, but he is definitely pushing back against the tribe. And so I feel fairly confident in this. It feels fairly well that the ESFP will fit, right? It doesn't mean that this is some medical diagnosis. I am not a medical doctor. I'm just a guy that spent an awful lot of time on this one subject. I spent an awful lot of time trying to figure out what was wrong in my own mind and how to get it straight, how to integrate into myself the things that I needed to get better about me. And so I changed some things in the MBTI system. I made it look a little bit different. It doesn't seem like everybody else's stuff. And hopefully I did that in a logically consistent manner. Hopefully these examples are showing that it works fairly well. I'm not in the middle of a scientific research study. I don't have that type of resources available to me. So I'm not trying to say that this is the only way, but it is a way. It is a structure, a framework that you can build upon to help yourself change yourself in the way that you want to change you. If you don't like the fact that you miss the ideas, this video is for you. This video is for the people who don't like the fact that their own logic gets in their way. This video is for you. Hopefully, we identify some things that help you to identify things within yourself that you want to change about you. I have a plan for making that happen. Jimmy, thank you for this interview. Ian, thank you for this interview. Y'all make sure y'all get back over to Ian's page. The link is provided down below. Give the whole podcast a watch. Get the full context of the situation. Make sure that you understand the ideas that are being at play here. Figure out where you stand on things. Figure out where you want to stand on things. This is a very interesting conversation, and I will be going back and watching the rest of it on my own time. But we're not here to just take somebody else's content. We're looking for examples on how to improve our own life. And hopefully, I helped you with that. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you were here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Bit State. Peace.